Talking Real Estate with Champions Real Estate Team here at Berkshire Hathaway Home Service Ambassador Real Estate Company. My name is Mark Wehner II, team leader here. And joining me today is Russ Williams. So we jump on every Wednesday and kind of go over what's going on in the real estate market over the last 7 days and just kind of get you caught up with everything going on. So our first thing we do is always a quick tip. This quick tip could be a really long tip, but I'll try to shorten it up as best as I can. So we're seeing a lot of stuff from a realtor standpoint of the agents emailing out saying seller willing to pay buyer's closing cost. Well, that's kind of a big misnomer that the seller's truly not paying your closing costs. The seller is actually allowing you to finance those closing costs into the loan, and essentially you're paying those closing costs over the next 30 years with the interest. So what I mean by that, for a simple example, try to keep it quick tip, short tip, is let's say a $100,000 house and the seller's willing to pay, $5,000 of buyer's closing costs. Truly, that seller is selling that house for $95,000. So what that means is you could write a contract for $95,000, pay your own closing cost, not have to pay interest on it over 30 years, and then you get that house at, 95 rather than 100,000. Now there's pros and cons to that. Let's say you're a buyer, maybe you don't have a lot of cash reserves. So then, yes, that may make sense to, hey, I want $5,000, pay to my closing costs. And that way you can take that 5,000 and say, it's your first time home buyer. You need furniture. You want to do a couple, renovations or, updates or things of that sort, that you have that cash in the bank that you're allowing to do that. So there are, goods and bads from that standpoint, but make sure if you're working with an agent that you understand that the seller's truly not paying your closing costs. It's a term that we use in the real estate industry. It's kind of, buyers get comfortable with that and they think that they're getting a deal on it. Well, they're paying my closing costs. No, they're not. They would sell you that house for $5,000 less. That's truly because they're netting what their take home is for that seller is the $95,000 minus all their, expenses and things of that sort of selling a home. So I'll try. That's about as much. I can go down a whole rabbit hole of explanation of everything. But if you have more questions on it, I'm happy to chat with you. Do a Zoom, over the phone, emails or anything. But my number is 672-7670, or Russ can give you more information regarding that too. So, but let's jump straight into what the real estate market's doing. So we saw a pretty active week. We've seen the most active week since what was it? Oh, the first when I looked back at my numbers, our end of September. We had, this week we had 357 new contracts written, so pending contracts. So people that went out there got a contract accepted. And when I looked at my numbers on my nice notebook here, and basically we went all the way back to, there's 381 back in September 27th. So what we're seeing now, obviously, is as the activity's picking up, weather's getting nicer, the rates are kind of basically stabilizing where they're at. And Russ can talk more about that in just a little bit. But so yeah, we had 386 new listings go live. So that's, kind of on par where, we were at 350. So we're kind of ticking up a little bit. You're going to see more inventory typically this time of year come on the market, unless we see a big cold snap or something like that, or we get a big, snowstorm, we might see numbers drop down. But we've seen that obviously new contracts ticking up. So that's buyers just going out there in the market. So we're seeing that activity. So as we said, get out there before that spring rush. If you're thinking about buying a house, interest rates are kind of probably going to be where they're at. So get with Russ and get your purchasing power. We'll figure it out, what makes sense. And we can even talk about the closing costs and all that kind of stuff with you as well. So we had 254 new happy homeowners this last week. So congratulations to them. So let's take a 30,000 foot view of what's going on here. And then 30,000 foot view, Omaha, Lincoln, MLS. So that's a combined Omaha, Lincoln metro areas. And kind of the surrounding areas. We had just under 2,400 homes. We had 1,433 homes in Douglas and Sarpy County. So I always break that out into existing homes at 528, new construction 905. So both of those numbers have steadily dropped a little bit each week. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more buyers come out on the market, more houses come off, and things of that sort. So there may be some of those houses that you've seen over the winter time that have been on the market for 100 days, 30 days. You maybe go out there and maybe, write them a fair offer, but you might get a little bit of a discount on those. But you also want to, if you're working with a savvy agent and you see new listings that come up that you've been maybe kind of watching a little bit, you haven't really jumped in the market, and all of a sudden a new listing pops up, go, I've seen that one before. Well, working with a savvy agent like a Champions Real Estate Team, we're going to go back and look at the history of that listing, because sometimes they'll list it for, let's say, for example, 200,000 in December, and then all of a sudden, and it didn't sell for 30, 45 days, all of a sudden in March, April, they'll list it for 215, and maybe you can get in there before and, get that lower price, because they're trying to capitalize on that spring market didn't sell, in that regard. So, but yeah, months of inventory, right around that 3 months, that's still kind of indicating a seller's market. Our average sold price is at 332. I just sent out to my sphere. They just got put in the mail today. Just kind of interesting thing. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a 47.5% increase in the average sold price. The average sold price in December of 2018 was, I believe it was 222,000. And then right now I think it was 323 in December, the numbers that I use for my trend graphics reports. And that was a 47% increase in your sold price. So when you talk about equity and energy in your house, that equity is growing, which is a good thing. And we saw a big increase in that because the government, pumped a bunch of money into the economy. Now we're obviously seeing the repercussions of that. But you also, if you were a homeowner, you were able to basically capitalize on some of that equity. Now, what do you do with that equity? You have that stored energy in your house, i.e. cash, essentially. You could do a home equity line of credit. You could turn around and, invest that into other real estate, use real estate to buy real estate, from a real estate investing standpoint. So that's just something, if you want to talk more about that, I can go down with that. I love chatting about the investing side of it, do it myself. So, but yeah, so if we're going to buy investment properties or even buy our first home or even a second home, we got to get the little bit more purchasing power for it. So let's talk to Russ Williams on what's going on in the mortgage side. So how are we doing, Russ?
Doing pretty well. Mortgage rates are continuing kind of on a sideways movement. We did see a little bit of deterioration last Friday when we had the headline number for new job creations that came out of the federal non-farm payroll report that's released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Came in a little bit above expectations, actually quite a bit above. Important thing to know there, though, is that every January, when the February report releases the January numbers, they do some adjustments for the entire year. And so that's not a monthly number as much as it is catching up of the annual number. Without boring you too much on details, the market saw that as an inflationary pressure thing. And so the bond market had deteriorated just a little bit, which is why we see rates up just a little bit from last Friday. We do expect, though, that they'll probably trade in a sideways fashion here for at least another week or so until we get better economic data coming out again. Next week, we've got some inflation numbers coming out, and our expectation is that inflation will continue to look better next week. And if so, we might get back some of the deterioration we saw in mortgage rates last week. The longer-term trend, assuming that things in the Middle East and around the world and with the elections stay somewhat reasonable, calm, and rational, is that we do expect to see mortgage rates improve as we go throughout the year. And as we've talked about many, many times, Mark, when we see mortgage rates go down and improve, that typically pulls more people off the sidelines and puts more pressure on home prices and makes it more difficult for those buyers. Earlier on, you mentioned those seller paid closing costs. It makes much more difficult for buyers to get concessions, whether those be seller contributions, such as Mark mentioned at the start of this Zoom, or whether it be things like home inspections and other sorts of things. So if you're thinking of buying a home, I highly encourage you to get out there now and buy the property while you can, potentially still get some of those concessions, because those may not be available later this year as demand possibly dramatically exceeds supply of homes available.
Yeah. And just like you said, I mean, we've said this time and time again, you don't wait to buy real estate, you buy real estate and wait. Just in that simple number that I told you 5 years ago, a 47% increase of that average sold price, in the Omaha Metro and basically in our MLS. That's a pretty good return on investment for 5 years, in that regards. And imagine if you had, you have your primary residence, and if you're able to take some of that equity potentially, and roll that into an investment property, that's 2 properties that you're doing. And then basically you can keep capitalizing, and snowball effect that. Ultimately, yes, you have your pros and cons of being a real estate investor and the landlord side of it, and evictions and repairs and stuff that I've dealt with. I've, had an eviction last year, so I'm not, immune to all that fun stuff. So I've been, in the trenches with it. So, but I look at it that I've had a pretty good return, on the equity aspect on it, over the couple of years that I've started doing the investment side of it. But yeah, I mean, happy to chat with it. But yeah, if you have any questions, we can help you in any way. Reach out to us at 672-7670 or give Russ a holler, 290-8936. And we are happy to chat with you. And awesome. Have a great rest of the week. Go Chiefs. Got Super Bowl Sunday coming up. So yeah, that may be a good time to go look at houses. Maybe not during the Super Bowl, but you can get some people that are going to be busy and not doing that, and you can get out and get a house. So, but anyways, appreciate it, and take care.